Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the second part of this program today, Real Talk. We're talking about politics and what is going to be happening at the next local government elections. Around the country, we've seen a number of initiatives being developed where people are absolutely fed up with the two political party system, but in particular, they're fed up with the Labour Party because of the response of the leader of the Labour Party to what's been happening in Gaza. Over 35,000 people have died. People are now starving. And yet, he has refused to call for a ceasefire. And that has really galvanized a lot of people, both particularly from the Muslim community, but also from the non-Muslim community, as we have seen on the marches in London and around the towns and cities in this country. A lot of non-Muslims, people of all faith and all no faith, people of different colors, all coming together to ask for justice and ask for this atrocious war, this genocide to be stopped. Now, one way to do that is to try and take some political responsibility and take charge of the politics both at a local level and a national level. And I know, and you've seen this happening throughout the country, and we saw this in particular on Thursday when George Galloway challenged the Labour Party and the Conservative Party in Rochdale. And whatever the Labour Party might say, that one of the reasons why he won was because they didn't have a candidate. I wish they had a candidate, because I think they would have found out that he would have lost anyway, or she would have lost anyway. I think there's a real push at the moment taking place to show, particularly Keir Starmer, that he's completely out of touch and he's seen as an agent of the Zionists. I have no problems with the Jewish community. I respect the Jewish community with my last breath, and I'll protect them, but it's Zionism that I have an issue with. And and it's anti-Semitism. I've been fighting anti-Semitism as I have been inequality and racism for the last 45, 50 years, and I'll continue to do so. But now, tide is changing. Young people are now saying we want to be seen to be taking a much more proactive role in how decisions are made in our name. So my two guests, Ishtiaq Ahmed and David Ward, as I said, David, a former MP, a long-standing councillor in Bradford, and Ishtiaq as well, he served as a councillor, are now standing at the next local government election in May. This is the 4th of May, isn't it?
2nd of May.
2nd of May. To try and change the power dynamics in the local authorities in Bradford. Now, coming to you, obviously, all this time in the past, as we were having a discussion before, a Labour Party has relied on the Muslim community in particular to vote them in. And you could put any Tom, Dick and Mary, and they would just win. But now young people are more galvanized. They're much more sophisticated. They're much more interested in seeing what's happening. Do you feel that that system of biradari, which you'll probably be more, I'm sure David will be as well, because he's a seasoned politician, that system of biradari, which is sort of slowly falling apart?
It is. And you've got to look at it from a historical context, right? Yeah, in terms of the Labour Party or the local Labour parties' relationship with the local Muslim community. So historically, they've reached out to these community networks that have primarily been based on biradari lines. Mm-hmm. And so that was an introductory to politics for the local Muslim community. Yes, it has been played out on biradari levels, but I don't entirely blame the biradari themselves. I think the Labour Party has played a huge role in terms of introducing that type of politics. That's what they've introduced, that's what they've expected, and that's what's been delivered to them. So why would they want to change the system that's been working for them, has delivered for them, gets the votes and support that they require? However, I think there's lots of questions being now asked about the competency levels of some of those councillors. And I can speak personally, because I've been there as a councillor. The vast majority of them have very little input into any decision making in the council. And as David mentioned before, the decisions are primarily made at executive level and for then everybody else to rubber stamp it. But even my personal experience is on various scrutiny committees has been that the vast majority of the Pakistani Muslim councils from the Labour Party have very little input into decision making. Now, there's reasons for that, because the vast majority of them don't come from backgrounds where they have experience in local government or working for the local voluntary sector or even within the NHS. So once elected, I mean, they may be very popular in their community, they may be prominent local businessmen, they may have a big brotherly that actually gets them elected in. But once elected and they're, for example, put onto the education committee, if they don't have a background in education, how are they going to hold them senior officers to account?
This was the question I was going to, do they understand the politics and the mechanisms of running a local government? I mean, you serve with lots of people.
They don't.
And what was your experience like, David?
I think that you mentioned, what change could we bring about? I think the level of opposition and the quality of opposition on the council is dreadful. So one thing we could do as a group of independents is to look at the whole of the scrutiny process. And the scrutiny is there to hold the executive to account. But it's chaired usually by either a Labour member or by a Conservative who really offer no opposition to the Labour group. Now, on the Select Committee in the House of Commons, which I sat on for 5 years, there's a different system in place, because it's not, when we're in a scrutiny committee in City Hall, we're asking the officers questions and the officers are responding. But it's the politicians who are getting paid £40,000-50,000 to chair these meetings, who should be, they're the policymakers and they're the ones that should be answering the questions. But the truth is, they're not qualified or competent enough to know enough about their policy area. And so they just pass it on to the officers stood next to them.
So now, that's a very important point. You got 14 people now as part of this independent, loose federation of independents in Bradford who want to challenge the sitting councillors. Do you feel that in that team of 14, now as I said, Muhammad Ali Islama, he's been on my program, very competent young man, very sharp, very sophisticated. I think he knows his stuff in terms of politics. Do you feel that the other 13, that, with the exclusion of you two, have got that level of understanding of how politics works and what needs to be challenged?
Maybe they haven't got the all-round skills that are required, but more importantly, they have the passion to serve their communities. I'm 50 years old, and I have an extensive background working with local authority and in the voluntary sector. I'm still continuing learning. However, I think what's required in this case is a real passion to work for the people that they serve and actually represent the values that they purport to represent as well. Now, that's always ongoing, you know. However, the question still is asked of whether the mainstream political parties are actually working for the people that they represent, or are they working for the parties? And for me, I think, this is where the crux of it is, because I've had lots of conversations with some of the elected members, and their argument is that they've got to remain within the party to be able to change from within. Now, that doesn't really wash down, because when I've clearly asked what are your objectives and what are your strategies to actually challenge your leadership, there isn't any, and
which has been proven.
And even if somebody like Corbyn couldn't detoxify the party, I'm not so sure whether our local councillors can have any influence at national level to be able to influence policy.
Don't forget,
David, your leader's actually asked for a ceasefire, hasn't he? Of the Liberal
belatedly, yes,
belatedly.
yes, and it should have been, and
belatedly.
I think that's largely thanks to Layla Moran, who's Palestinian, a member of Parliament, who's been personally affected by what's happening there.
She's got family there, yes.
But the other thing I wanted to, I know it may seem an enormous task for a relatively small group of independents to have some influence, but don't forget, you need 46 councillors to have a majority out of the 90. Labour have probably got 55, 56 at the moment.
Right.
So if they lost 7, 8, 9, 10 councillors to other parties, they would lose their majority. Now, once you lose the majority, you then lose overall control of the council, and you can only reach agreement with the support of others. And that's probably the best way for the council to go in the medium term, so that we can actually have some challenge to Labour and take away their automatic, which they believe, their automatic right to govern.
In fact, that is, I think, the aspiration of a lot of people that I talk to around the country, where there's similar campaigns going on to get independents elected, that the intention is that, they know that they're not going to take overall control of the local authority, but what they may do is take enough seats from the ruling party to actually have the impact. Yeah,
it's about influence.
To have the impact, yeah. I mean, obviously, you've made a very important point, and that is people are tied into party politics. I mean, I was a member of the Labour Party for 45 years, and then I made a speech at the last invasion of Gaza in Bradford against Keir Starmer, and within a few weeks, I got a letter from the Labour Party saying, "Thank you very much, we don't need you anymore." And
disgraceful.
Then they rang me a few times to say, "Please, can you rejoin?" I joined because I believed in the value of the Labour Party at that time. I was, committed to equality and social justice, and I was one of the champions in local government throughout the nation, the country, on anti-apartheid, and had the fortune to meet Nelson Mandela on 3 occasions because of my close connections with local authorities against apartheid, and I was recognised for the work that I'd done, and that I'm glad that I'm no longer a member of the Labour Party, because I don't want to be a member of a party which does not recognise apartheid that is going on at the moment in Palestine. But I mean, young people obviously are the future, as you say, right? How are you going to make sure that that zeal, that passion, that there's shown out at the moment in the marches, in the demonstrations, that you can capture and harness that?
I think that's ongoing, and for us it's about trying to kind of raise awareness and educate people about the advantages of having independent candidates. Just as an example, soon after 7th of October, when the war started in Gaza, on a local level, the Labour leadership called in the vast majority of their councillors and told them that they couldn't attend marches, they couldn't go to protests, they couldn't talk about it in a public forum, they couldn't write anything on social media. And I mean for me, it kind of posed the question. I mean, it sounds more like a communist party than actually a socialist party.
It's almost like Putin, Russia.
Exactly. So, yeah, absolutely. And to kind of silence and muzzle and gag the local politicians from actually engaging in those conversations, for me, raises some serious questions about how democratic these parties are.
I don't think young people are only interested. We've seen that with climate change and indeed with this conflict. Young people are only interested in young issues, but one thing that we really need to do in Bradford, everybody talks about us being one of the youngest cities in Europe and so on. We treat young people despicably. The amount of resources that is going into youth services and supporting young people. It's tough being a young person nowadays. We know that there's been a growth in mental health issues for young people. The response from the current Secretary of State for Education is actually to, when children have mental health issues and cannot go to school, is to fine the parents for those children when the children do not go to school. We need better youth services. We need young people to lead the development of those services, and we need to actually treat them with a bit of respect, which I don't think we do.
Every political campaign, whether it's local or national, needs a lot of foot soldiers, as they call them, on the ground, to go out and knock on doors and put posters up, etc. Are you getting that support, and is it coming from young people?
Yes, it is. We've had a number of people that have come forward volunteering to help support us. As you've probably already seen, our independent group is very diverse, and so therefore reflective of the demographics. And that's one of the things I wanted to ensure, that if we form this kind of independent bloc, it has to be diverse. The first time we're having somebody from African heritage standing as a candidate in Bradford Council. We've never had somebody from an African background. Now that shows our commitment to the diversity, because that's one of our strengths as a city, is our diversity, and it's using that strength to for political moving forward politically. However, I think young people are mobilising and are coming forward to support. I mean, I spent last few weeks knocking on the doors and speaking to people. there is a very strong anti-Labour sentiment out there, and the
And
vast majority of it is because of the
stance of the leader. Yeah.
Absolutely.
How are you finding? You mentioned masjids and mosque, institutions who previously aligned themselves with an individual who happens to be a Labour supporter. Are you detecting any change in those institutions at the moment?
No, they're silent.
They're silent.
Yeah.
Right.
They're absolutely silent, and this is the point I was making, that not only in this kind of political spectrum do we have gatekeepers on the outside, we also have gatekeepers on the inside as well.
Right. David, I mean, your interaction with white young people, Asian young people, Caribbean young people, have you seen a change in the way they articulate their concerns from, say, 10 years ago to now, when you're canvassing?
The social media, which, I struggle to keep up, I must say,
I'm not on social media.
With young people nowadays. But I think that has made a huge difference to society as a whole. Some of that is for the benefit of society, some is not, I have to tell you. And one of the things and we've seen this with Trump, and we've seen it with our own government, but the use of social media to tell lies over and over and over again. And the lack of respect for politicians, it's not always been great, but it seems to me that there is even more now a view that politicians just lie. They are just dishonest people. And I'm afraid that is largely because of the way that they can pump out messages over and over again. And by the time you've proved that's a lie, there's another 3 lies that have followed on.
Yeah. And are you using social media as a means of communicating with young people? Because nowadays they say everything is on social media. And most young people would rather look on social media than get the Telegraph in August, for example, or the Asian Express or the Sunday Age.
Social media is very key, especially for the age bracket of under 40. And even then, I mean, the only social media that I've ever been on was actually Facebook, but I'm told that that's no longer
I think it's TikTok,
the mainstream.
Instagram or something
so
like
it's
that.
kind of TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, etc. So we've kind of adapted and changed our kind of communication. So we are having to now put out videos on TikTok and Snapchat, and that's the way kind of forward.
But this will be won on the doorsteps. Because it is face-to-face contact with people, that it gives you the ability to say to them, look, who's your local councillors? Do you actually know the names of your local councillors? When was the last time you saw your local councillor? When did they ever get in touch with you? They made all sorts of promises 4 years ago or 3 or 4 years ago. When was the last time you saw them? And when they come to your door in 2 or 3 weeks before the election, say to them, where have you been?
I mean, that's a perennial thing that happens with all political elections, because I remember years and years ago somebody saying to me, why should I vote for this person? I last saw that person 4 years ago when they wanted to vote. But and that's an argument that people make all the time.
But if you look at Little Horton, where you've got now 3 independent councillors, because they haven't got a big party backing, a big party vote, they know that unless they work, they will lose. If I do win as an independent, I know I cannot rely on an independent vote in 3 or 4 years' time when I stand again.
So you're going to have to do the grafting.
You've got to do, and that's the problem with the Labour councillors, in my view. They just think they can win. They have a right to win.
You put any Tom, Dick and Mary, and usually the party machine will get you elected. I mean, obviously, the message for me would be that we now have a chance to not only show Keir Starmer where he's going wrong, show Rishi Sunak that his politics are also toxic, and we want to see that the status of politics, as David says, is changed. That you put a new mechanism in place which will reflect the actual views of people, young people and other people, into the political structure, so that their needs are met. Now, obviously, that is a message. But young people, I think, need to take on this role very, implicitly, and they need to sort of get involved in the politics. And I know that you've got this group of people. You've got 14, and you've got support behind that. do you feel that more and more young people need to engage in what you're trying to do?
Well, the reason there's been a disconnect for such a long time, people have this view that, oh, all politicians are the same. We're not interested because you make promises, you don't deliver, we've heard it all before. And so people just switch off. And it's instilling that confidence into people again to say, hey, we're here to listen to you, and we're here to actually deliver for you. But that confidence will take time to build again.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, David Ward. Thank you, Ishtiaq Ahmed, for coming and sharing your thoughts and your ideas and your aspirations of how you want to get involved in Bradford politics and try and change it so it reflects much more what the issues and the needs and the challenges are of the community.
Absolutely.
Which hitherto, as you say, has not been really listened to, because you feel that the people who've been representing these people, the communities, have not really articulated their needs in the way that they should have done.
Absolutely.
Because they were, I suppose, sort of shackled by the party politics.
That's right.
And the party line, as you say, they have to follow the party line. So that's, So, as I say, my appeal to young people would be that make sure that you do participate, you do go to the polling stations on the 2nd of May, and you make the decision as soon as possible for the right decision. Now, can I just change tack for today? This is going to be the last program before Ramadan, and I'm sure Ramadan is very important to everyone who's watching this program. And Ramadan is a month of giving for Muslims. We usually give our zakat in the month of Ramadan and in sadaqah as well. Now, I'd like to urge you to make sure that you continue to do so as generously as you have been doing. Iqra TV and Al Khair Foundation has been one of the beneficiaries and will continue to be the beneficiaries of some of the generosity that you show year in, year out. But I'd just like to make a small plea. While we do give quite a lot of money, and some of the majority of that goes abroad into India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and places in Africa and other parts of the world, I think one of the most key messages I want to give you before we go away tonight is please make sure that we also consider those people and those issues which are also quite important and challenging within our communities here. As you remember, the old adage, charity begins at home. There are a number of charities in this area who are looking for your support. And one in particular is the Muslims for MRI. I'm hoping that our colleagues will put the page up. Muslims for MRI is a charity that I'm very deeply involved with, trying to raise funds for a new MRI scanning machine at Pinderfields Hospital in Wakefield, which at the moment the old one is not very efficient, and we need a new one. You'll see there's a social media page, and if you go on Just Giving Muslims for MRI, you'll be able to see how you can contribute. We have pledged to raise £150,000 towards this machine. The total is going to be £6 million. The government has given £5 million. The rest is to be collected by the local community. The trust has also put some money in themselves, but we're now starting to raise money for this particular machine. And there are appeals similar like this with BRI, Bradford Infirmary, and also the Leeds Children's Hospital and other hospitals around your territory as well, wherever you live. So what I'm saying to you is please make sure that you contribute not just to the appeal that I've made, but all the local appeals where we need your support to try and help those who are the most vulnerable in our community. As I say, I'm passionate about this particular appeal at Pinderfields, and I hope you will go onto the social media page and give as generously as you can. We live in this country, our children are born in this country, we're all touched by the health service, and we need these services to be the best that we can get. So I'm asking you to make sure that wherever you are, whatever you can donate, please make do so. In the meantime, I wish you all the best of Ramadan. May it be a month of spiritual uplifting for yourself. Please make dua for me and my team, Adil and Maulana Asad and team at Al Khair, and may you have the most pleasant, most blessed Ramadan that you have ever had so far. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.